Good. All
Yeah.
right. Well, welcome everybody to the AGM. Very formal and official of us. Yeah, I think we've got a pretty simple agenda tonight, but I think it'll be good for us to just kind of check back in and reflect over the last year. And so, I mean, it's great we've got Kelly here to be able to send greetings from the council. That sounds so formal, but you know, that's the way it is. And Kelly's such a formal person. I always feel like I have to, like, I don't know, wear a ceremonial robe or something when she comes to a meeting. But yeah, no, it's just, this is great. This is always, I feel like one of the things that was the weirdest about not having a normal year was the fact that, like, we don't have this kind of, you know, annual check-in point and the way that we do that. So it'll be nice to have that tonight and have Kelly with us and to do some kind of business for the association for the year, and then we'll move on to our regular board meeting afterwards just to do some updates on some stuff. So in terms of the agenda, it's pretty simple. It's in the meeting minutes there in the folder, but we'll basically have some opening remarks from Kelly. You know, I'm doing the welcome now, I guess, and then we've got we'll just do some kind of housekeeping stuff related to the AGM from our last AGM meeting, which was in 2019. And then I just wrote up a quick activities report, which is just kind of a summary of some of our activity from last year and some reflections on our activities as a board. Frank has prepared a financial report as the treasurer, and then we just have some business to attend to related to our directors' terms and officers' roles. We'll roll that all just into one document, and so we'll vote on that, and then that'll be it for the AGM. So yeah, so why don't we throw it to you, Kelly? We'll do that, and then to the agenda. Anything to be asked. So join us, Kelly.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to be here. I'd be here more often if I could. But it's a pleasure to be here. And really, I just want to take the time to say thank you to you, the board, for all that you do and the commitment that you have to the community. I think it's wonderful every year that we get to recognize you at this time for all the work you put in, and Laura, for all the work that you do on behalf of the board. It's absolutely tremendous what you guys are able to accomplish with the spaces that you have and all the activities that you run, and how this past year you've really had to pivot in order to make sure the community still looked after with all the programming and all the hard work that you've had to do on top of your normal jobs and your regular lives. So I just truly want to say thank you from the city for all the hard work that you put in. I don't know if you want me to give a little bit of an update on anything. I just have a couple. Is now the time that you would want me to do that? And then
That'd be great.
Okay, then there can be any questions. We'll start with construction. As we all know, it's construction season, and unfortunately this year, 2 major roadways within your boundaries are going to be under construction this year. Ottawa Street by the Sunrise Center is going to be under construction for the full construction season. And then also the roundabout at Bleams and Fisher Hallman is going to be going in, as we see that intersection is somewhat a nightmare right now. So hopefully they can get the first parts done and we can start turning left again and have not the backups that we have. So those are regional projects, but I always try to stay up to date on what's going on with those. So those are 2 big things. The Southwest Community Library is still on time for spring 2023. It's going to be an exciting project. There's lots of exciting news coming with that library, and it's going to be great for the community overall. And then we have RBJ Schlegel Park, which is a tremendous asset within the ward. And it's getting so much use now, but phase 2 starts this year, which will include the Heritage Building turning into a change facility and a washroom building. And there's some courts going in, and like tennis courts and basketball courts and pickleball courts. And the cricket pitch will be open this year. So there's a lot of wonderful things going on there as well. So those were the main updates that I had. I don't know if anybody has any questions for me on any of this stuff or anything at all city related.
there been any updates on our actual community center, or is it just getting pushed and pushed and pushed?
Unfortunately, it's getting pushed. And I think the only reason, or one of the major reasons, is because we're partnering with the school. It's the plan to partner with the school and be attached with the school that's going there. And all of those negotiations are going well. It's just the school's not coming online within our timelines. And so that's kind of what's pushing us back, because we do have the funding, or we did have the funding. It may be pushed out, but unfortunately, with the time, we're bound now to the timing of the school unless we go for a standalone building.
Cool.
Sorry, I don't have better news on that front.
Oh, Kelly, one thing that we get a lot of questions about, and I don't know if you can speak to it this year much, is the speeding in our area and the parking. I know that's always brought up in this area, but do you have anything new that you could talk about?
It's not so new, but a lot of people don't know about it, is the resident-led traffic calming program that we have. So if residents are concerned, they can take the lead and they can get supported by staff to put in various different, what's the word I'm looking for? They're more passive traffic calming measures than your speed humps or your diversions and that kind of thing. It's more of like murals on the road or planters in the medians and different things to try and narrow the roadway. We see the flexi poles go up every year, and I get to pick for the most part where they go. But there's so many streets that want them, and there's only so many that we're allowed, because in our budget we only have so many per ward. And then they took 3 this year to narrow Activa a little bit. So that took up 3 signs of what I needed to do. But it's the people in our neighborhood that are speeding, and we need to somehow figure out how to get everybody to slow down, because I know there's concerns on virtually every street. I know in Huron Village, we are piloting the 40 km/h speed limit. The feedback I'm hearing from that is it's great and all, but unless it's enforced, it's not doing a whole heck of a lot. And it's hard to get the police to sit out there and clock people supposed to be going 40 km/h when they can be getting the people on Fisher Hallman Road that are going 140 km/h. So it's trying to figure out that balance, but we are looking at the 30 or 40 km/h speed limits in subdivisions. And then, so those are I guess the two main ones that I would bring. And then parking, you said as well. Parking has always been an issue and something that I've dealt with since pretty much day one. And you can only do so much. Like, we are allowed to park on street, but then some people don't like parking on this, having people park on the street. And then there's boulevard parking, and some people don't like boulevard parking. And unfortunately, we have a lot of homes in our area that have more cars than they have parking spaces. And so how do we accommodate that? And, especially now with a lot of university kids home, because they're at their online schooling as well, there's an added car there. So I'm not sure there's a right answer, but I think if anybody has any ideas, I'm always open to trying to look new ways that will help the community.
So Kelly, can I ask, is there something when we talk about the murals and stuff, is that something maybe we could take the lead? I know it's worked in other communities and maybe closer to the park, where we do see people running the stop sign there more and stuff like that, and trying to promote that. And I think from the parking, I agree with the older adults home. My 22-year-old is one of them, but is graduated, but only comes home when he's not working. We've struck a deal with a neighbor. It cost him a 6-pack to park there for the weekend, but and my neighbor didn't want to take it, but he's holding on to the beer so that when we can see each other again, we'll split the beer. But I mean, it's the principle of the thing. He had a choice: park his fancy car on the road or park at the neighbor's. So it's sharing stories, I think, like that too, because I do find even on my small street, it is unbelievable the amount of cars that are parked on the street. And some of the driveways are 3 wide on my street. A lot of people did go 3 wide when they
Yeah.
poured concrete. So I just can't believe the amount of cars that are there, especially when we're not having visitors, right? So that's
Right.
the other thing too. So
Right. Yeah, just absolutely. If the WCA wants to take the lead, or anyone specifically wants to take a lead on getting a mural done with the community and working with staff, that's easy to go to resident-led traffic calming on the website and follow kind of the directions on there. And that might be something good to look into for sure.
That's great, Kelly. Thank you. Yeah, and those are the kind of resources we want to be able to pass around the community. So yeah, whatever we can do to help promote those kinds of initiatives in the city is really, really helpful.
You guys are pretty good at, when I send something out via Facebook or Twitter, that you either retweet or share my posts. So that's great that you help, because you've got probably a better following from the immediate community than I do. So I think it's good that and helpful when you're able to reshare things like that that are important to the community for them to know. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Yeah, we're more than willing to help with those sorts of things, because that's oftentimes what we find we keep hearing from residents, is that it's just about how to pass that information on to folks, right? So the more we can do to help that way, the better.
Great.
Well, thank you, Kelly, and I appreciate you here. And yeah, anytime we can see you is great. But yeah, it's I think especially helpful this time of year to be able to get a kind of temperature check on things like those longer term projects, and be able to know kind of where those are the other kinds of questions we get from residents all the time, right? So being able to get an update on that stuff is very helpful. So thank you. Well, Maria came back. Excellent. Awesome. Okay, so related to the AGM itself proper, I mean, we've got to do an acceptance of the records. I have an activities report, we have the financial report, and then we have our board and officer terms. Is there anything else that anybody from the membership wants to raise in terms of anything to add to the agenda that we need to have on here? No? Okay. Can I get a motion then to accept this as the AGM agenda for today's meeting? Oh, that was fast. There was like speed round there. I'm going to give it to Christine with Maria as the seconder. This is a fun game. I like this game. Let's do this. Let's see how fast you can put your hands up. Awesome. Okay, all in favor? You missed the speed instructor. Come on. So many hesitations there. No, that's great. Okay, motion passes. That's great. Okay, Laura, do you mind pulling up the activities report? I'll highlight a few things. I'm not going to read it out loud. If you want to read the full thing, you can look at my ramblings in my thing here. But I mostly was just trying to summarize the year. I mean, the reality is we had a crazy year. I mean, that I was trying to figure out how many ways I could say it was an unusual year without saying it's an unusual year. But the truth is, I mean, 2020 was incredibly challenging on many levels, but it was also incredibly inspiring to me to see the ways that everybody was able to pivot into online programming, the way our instructors embraced new ways of doing stuff, just the incredible positive feedback from different people in the neighborhood about different initiatives we tried, different things we did to just try and continue to build a neighborhood feel. I feel like that was a real big victory for us last year, was a sense that despite the fact that we were not able to do business as usual, we were still able and continued to hear from residents how much they appreciated not only the association's work, but they appreciated the work of the community in making Williamsburg a great place to live. And so it was really hard for me to narrow down everything, because it was just so many things, big and small, that we did. And that the community did, really honestly, to put together a great year. So, I called out things like, we were one of the first associations to pivot to online classes and programming, and it worked really well, especially, in the early days when we were all still trying to figure out how to do Zoom and how to host things online. A lot of our instructors were just willing to pitch in and figure that out, and Laura did an amazing job supporting them. Little things like, people putting sidewalk messages out, or encouragement rocks, or scavenger hunts, like all those things, especially I think about in the spring and summer of last year when we were all still adjusting to what pandemic life looked like, people continuing to be creative and find ways to connect even when we weren't even, things like the concept of physical distancing was a brand new idea, trying to figure out what that looks like. Different work with community partners, people providing space. The Red Cross grant was huge in terms of helping us to continue to do things like ESL throughout the pandemic, as well as making our online class experience better. Being able to have a proper Zoom license and not having to do everything with free accounts was a big deal. I think it's worth calling out too that we were able to create self-sustaining programs in the midst of this. Not everything was a total loss. It wasn't. I think I feel like I can speak for the board in saying we were willing to spend money to make things happen, even if we needed to. But the fact that we were able to creatively and quickly, make decisions on things about which programs we should go ahead with, which ones were working from previous sessions, what should we continue to work on, I think is a huge thing. And I think all of this comes down to the fact that, everybody just pitched in this year and really did what needed to be done to make us have a great experience, even in such difficult circumstances. And so, for all of the volunteers and program staff that did work at the city, and, at the end of the day, I have to call out Laura for all of the incredible work she did, and the creativity, and the willing to try new stuff, and the willing to, even just post things on our Instagram to get people inspired and encouraged. I hear all the time from friends and neighbors in the community about how little things like they're going through their social media feeds, and it's, this crisis, that crisis, this political thing, this, big concern about, whatever, being able to see some positivity and some hopefulness in the midst of that, I think really made a big deal for a lot of people in our neighborhood. So thank you, Laura, for all your work, and thank you to the board for all of the effort we all put in this year to make this stuff happen. So good on all of us. And let's hope next year is not even, or this year, I guess, 2021. I feel like we learned a lot of really cool stuff from this year that I think even as the pandemic situation improves, we're going to continue to reap the benefits from our ability to be nimble when it comes to delivering services to our neighborhoods. So I think that's a real positive going forward. All right. So I guess with that, I'll have a motion to accept this as a summary of our activities for the year. Obviously, it's not exhaustive, but it is tried to capture the kind of highlights that way. So I'll take a motion for that. And then if anybody has any questions about the report or anything they want to add to it, we can put that in there. Frank? And second? Oh, Sandra, nice. All right. Any questions or comments about that report? No? Awesome. All right, all in favor of accepting this report? Hooray. All right, Laura, if you could pull up the financial report, and I'll have Frank speak to that, that'd be great.
All right, so I had a challenge of trying to weed through the financials, and I think I was able to pull enough information together, and thanks to Laura for giving me little tidbits here and there just to help me out a little bit to understand. So there are two income statements here. One is for 2019, because you didn't have an AGM last year, we needed to close off 2019. And I was able to determine that you did show a profit from 2019. These are not audited statements. This is to the best of my knowledge of the information that we have. So basically we're showing a plus side of just over $4,000 that would go back to our investment account. And that was added on at December 31st, 2019 to give you a total of $21,000 in your investment account. That is your typical savings account. That's not all those sub accounts. So, when you see the financials, and Rich might have showed you before, you guys have an inclusion account, you have an outreach account, you have a fee account, and now you have a rink account and you have a park account. Those are not included with that investment account. The investment account is kind of like your rainy day account. It's sitting there where we would put profit into that. So what I'm recommending are a couple motions. So the first motion is really the WCA approve a transfer to the investment account in the amount of $4,731.65, ensuring the appropriate monies have been allocated to inclusion, outreach, support, and fee assistance. And why I've added that part in there is because when that whole program started, we always tried to make sure that that was topped up to a certain amount. You'll see a note below. And then if we used anything, we obviously used anything. But once it flatlined, I think some of them were at $1,200, we would not add any more money to it. So it's just making sure that we always have money in those accounts, particularly to help those who need the assistance in the community. So I can move that motion. I just need somebody to second that motion. I think it was Maria fast. I think, but Tom's still on mute. So I think Maria got that one fast.
Sorry, I saw Maria's hand go up. Yep.
Did you? Okay, I did. Okay.
Yep.
All right. And moving along, Laura, can you move to the next one? All right, ooh, there we go. So then I did the income statement for 2020. So this was kind of a little bit of a challenge as well, but I think I was able to figure out a little bit of stuff. And obviously you have a Red Cross grant in there. There would be money, you received money that was going out. Obviously you can tell from 2020, you would have been operating at a loss. You probably thought, the first 3 months you're starting off great. And then we obviously went into this lockdown and a lot of other things coming about. So COVID-19 didn't help at all. Obviously we know that, and Tom's highlighted to that, but you guys did pivot very well and did the best that you can for what you had to do. So basically you're showing a loss of just over $8,000 in 2020. So my motion here is that the WCA approve a transfer from the investment account, so that's your rainy day account, to offset that into the operating, just so it flatlines at zero. Being a not-for-profit, you always need to flatline at that zero and how you get to that. So that's the motion that I will move, and I'm just looking for somebody to second it. Sandra, quick as a bunny, just way up there. Christine was pretty quick though. I think Sandra was there. I did add some notes at the bottom, like I've talked about, which happened in 2017 and 2016 for the income in 2016, and where those fee assistance accounts came about. And I don't know if all the board members know this. It came out of a year that we saw significant revenue. And just coincidental, we weren't trying to make money as a not-for-profit. That's not your goal. We just did very, very well, where Laura was very creative of how we got our space rented. And there's some things changed where we were able to rent space free of charge. We did some other joint partnerships. And with that money, we saw we should create some opportunities to support people in the community through inclusion support, outreach, and fee assistance. And that would help. And then in 2019, you guys took over formal operation of the rink account, where the rink gets a certain amount of money each year to it caps. And then if you don't use it, it caps at that from the city of Kitchener. And then you've also created a Max Becker Commons Parks account in that. So moving down a little bit, Laura, can we move down just a little bit? We'll get to the budget. Okay, so what I will do for 2019 and 2020, and I think a recommendation to the board is I would like to dig a little deeper into those finances and then represent them as true, or even have a third party just look at them. Even if I can get somebody who can volunteer as an accountant, I do know some people, just have a quick look to make sure that we're still on track and that the monies haven't been done a certain way. I can only put what I could put together based upon the knowledge that I had and the documents that I had from Richard and from Laura and stuff like that. So I just think we need to get a little bit more accurate than those numbers that are there. We noticed there was no budget for 2021. So no budget kind of formally brought forward. It's usually brought forward at the AGM or at the January meeting. So you know what you're working on for 2021. So I kind of looked at where are we right now? Where do we want to go? Not knowing how we're going to come out of COVID and stuff, and try to be very conservative. So looking at programs probably generating about $25,000 of revenue, an expense line about $11,000. WCA manager of operations, that covers Laura's expenses. And there's some other things in there from phone and also wages and stuff. And then administration board expenses, and then our board expenses at the bottom, which is our D&O insurance. And just looking at, we've seen an increase in that insurance in the last year. So I've kind of capped it out at $1,500. Putting this budget together, we would show an operating loss of $3,200 at the end of 2021. Let's hope we're on the positive side and we can start to run some good programming into the fall. But I think that just gives you a good perspective of where we are and how financially we are doing we're doing well, but just to know that we could show a loss at the end of the year. I think as a small not-for-profit, and from my experience in the not-for-profit I work for, and obviously, my wife runs a bigger not-for-profit, you don't even want to see what her losses are right now for 2020, closer to 2.1 million. But this is very conservative for the size of our not-for-profit and what we would show a loss at this point. I don't know if I had anything below that. I think I might. Do I have a motion below that, Laura? Yes, I do. So I do have a motion to accept this budget with showing a deficit and moved by myself. And then I can take any questions if anybody has any questions. Anybody want to second that motion? Yes, Christine?
Christine got in this time.
Okay, so now that the 3 motions have passed, I'm happy to take any other questions that you may have, and we can go to the top and work to the bottom, or if you're just happy with the information that you've received at this point. I should say somewhere, and I don't know how to say it, Richard did set you up quite nicely. The spreadsheets you do have do work quite nicely and do flow. Laura and I did look at them. It just needs to flow a little bit more with our actual bank statement, just with the timing and stuff like that. And you can imagine with anybody's bank statement, just knowing when revenue's coming in and expenses are going out. So once I get further access to that, I can probably get a more accurate record on some of those other little expenses that may not have seen. You know, you mentioned the Zoom. Are you guys paying for a Zoom account right now? I guess. Yeah. So that will be encompassed somewhere, which I couldn't see on Richard's folder, but just where we can try to find that a little bit more.
Okay, that's great. Any other comments or questions about the financial statement?
Just super quick, the Zoom account we paid for with the Red Cross grant.
Oh, did you? Oh, awesome. Okay, that's perfect then. So it's in and out. Okay.
Yeah.
Even better.
Julie, thanks for joining us.
Oh, you
I
can't
think
hear
you're on
Julie.
mute, Julie, or your voice isn't coming through. I feel like that's the emotion of 2020, 2021 is I can't believe I'm on mute. We should get that all in t-shirts. All right. Thank you so much for that, Frank, and thank you for your work on that. And we really appreciate you rejoining us in the treasurer's role, which is awesome. So thank you again for your work that way.
No problem.
Awesome. Okay. So the last thing will be the board member and officer terms. So Laura, if you could pull that up. So we can go about this one of 2 ways. So I put in, based on our previous conversations as a board, everybody in for 2 more years. However, we can make adjustments that way, and it actually is generally considered best practice for us to stagger terms a little bit. So if what I did was I put in 2-year terms for now, with the sense that basically, because I didn't want to speak for specific individual people, I can speak for myself that I'm willing to do a 2-year term. But basically, I put this in here, and then folks can basically adjust here as they need it. It would be great if we could have 1 or 2 board members put in for a 1-year term, not because I mean, obviously we'd love to have you for as long as you want to serve as a board member, but it allows us to stagger the renewals, so we're not renewing the entire board on an annual basis. So yeah, so my first question would be, 1, if anybody was willing to put their name down for a 1-year term with that understanding, or would be more comfortable with a 1-year term, to put that in there. And then if anybody wants to put themselves forward for a different officer's role, we can also be open to that as well. I just didn't hear from anybody either way, so I just put in kind of business as usual, and then we could make adjustments tonight. So sorry, I heard one person say that they would. Was that Sandra?
Yeah, I'll go in for 1 year.
I'll also volunteer to do 1 year.
Okay, that's great.
You guys can hear me now, right?
Yes.
Oh, thank God.
It would have been really spooky if we knew you said you wanted in for 1 year and we couldn't hear you.
Yeah,
So
just kidding.
Sorry, my brain doesn't work.
I understand. It's just
Same.
cute. All right, that's great. So yeah, that was Julie, Maria, and Sandra, I believe. Maria, did you put your hand up for that too?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you needed to me, it doesn't
Yeah.
matter. As long as I live here, I can stay on
Yeah.
the board and I'm good. So whatever works.
Yep. This is more just generally considered a governance
Yep.
best practice, is that, and we only slipped into us all renewing all on 1 year just because of our lack of an AGM last year because of the pandemic. And so that's where we just kind of, we got out of sync. But this is great because then we can, yeah, I mean, obviously in 2022, we'd love to have the 3 of you on a 1-year term back again, if you're willing. But this just allows us to do the renewals in a more staggered fashion. It just makes it a little easier to take care of things. Okay. That's great. And so with the roles, again, I just put in kind of business as usual as we're here. But again, I'm if folks are wanting to take a different role, try something different this year, then I'm certainly more than open to that. But I'll let the rest of the board speak to that as well.
I just have a question. Are there any
Yep.
roles that there really should be? I mean, I would think president, vice president, secretary, treasurer are sort of the normal ones. is there something that was previously, you know, when there was more people on the board, was there another role that was maybe important that we just haven't had because of our small numbers?
Yeah, so we don't have any outstanding officer roles that aren't being filled, but we have in the past had, we've had some kind of working group committees. So we had a program team at one point. We had kind of a marketing communications team at one point. We had roles that weren't formal officers roles, but were roles that folks played in the board kind of for a time and place based on need that way. We haven't filled those roles in quite a while, even before the board got a little bit smaller, just because we found we were just kind of fulfilling those roles kind of as a working team. But if folks wanted to take on, you know, when I first joined the board, I think about a year after I joined the board, I kind of took on a communications role for a little while because we had a need for that and needed somebody to put some time and energy into it. So if anyone is passionate, if you or anybody else on the board would like to kind of take an area of focus for the year or something, then we can certainly acknowledge that with a role. It doesn't need to be formally voted on at the AGM though, so we can always do that. If any of you wanted to take that away and think about that and bring that to another board meeting, we can vote on that just as a board as well.
Thanks, Tom.
All right. Well, if there aren't any other adjustments that way, then I will take a motion to accept. We don't need to vote on, we'll just accept this as the nominations list for the year. We don't need to do it individually, unless somebody wants to call out in the motion that they want to, like, I don't know, like strip me of my rank as president or something. Which you're willing to do if you want to. But if not, I'll just call for somebody to have a motion to accept these terms and officers roles for effective as of the end of this AGM. Julie?
Sure.
Okay, can I get a seconder? Frank? All right. If there are any other questions, all in favor? Hooray. All right, we're all back. I love it. All right, the band continues. I love it. All right, well, that brings us to the end of the AGM portion. So I'll call for a motion to adjourn the AGM, and then we'll start our board meeting if we have anything to discuss that way. Maria, thank you. All right, all in favor of adjourning the meeting? Thank you. And again, thank you so much to Laura and Frank for your work putting into these reports. Really appreciate it.